It's the Last Stand Podcast. And here's your host, Brian Custer.
That's right. The unfiltered, straight talk from some of the biggest names in sports and entertainment. That's what we deliver here on The Last Stand. I am Brian Custer, and today we got a really special guest. This man played 14 seasons in the NBA. He's an NBA Hall of Famer, and he's also an Olympic gold medalist and a true trailblazer in the game. He's none other than Spencer Haywood. Spence, welcome to The Last Stand.
Hi, Brian. Thank you. Thank you for having me on The Last Stand.
It's great to have you on. Man, listen, I want to go through your entire career, your life, because it is fascinating. And let's start with, how does a young man from Silver City, Mississippi, one of 10 kids, make it and become one of the greatest basketball players to ever play?
It's a lot of, it was a lot of work because I was born to indentured slavery in this town of Silver City, Mississippi. And let me remind you that it ain't no silver and it ain't no city. Population of 370 people. And we were just strictly sharecropping and picking cotton, chopping cotton, hauling corn, scrapping cotton. So everything was centered around the cotton because we were part of that group that was transported down to Mississippi during the slavery period and after for the purpose of picking cotton. Now, when I tell this story sometime, people get a little shook up that the farmer put my mother and father together to breed kids that were strong so that they could have farm hands during that whole period. And we're not talking 1800, we're just talking 1960s.
Wow.
Yeah, and so my family wasn't able to leave the farm because if you left the farm, and the farmer always claimed that you owed him something, so you could hurt your family, kill your family. And I was born in the headquarters of the Klan. So that was surrounding my life. And so I came out on my birthday, 4/22/1949, and lo and behold, everybody, my brothers tell me the story, and they tell me that everybody saw this baby come out, and they said, man, this guy is going to be the best cotton picker we have ever seen. Look how big his hands are. I know, you know. So I was born with the idea that that's what I was going to be, the best cotton picker in the county first, and then I would advance to the state. And so what I was doing as a young person, not thinking of myself as a young player, but I was out in the fields, and we all had to work by the clock, which was sun up to sundown.
Dare I ask, did you get paid?
You get paid $2 a day. Yeah. And some days you didn't get that. But what I started doing at 4 and 5, I started picking cotton, and I grew into my body, and I picked more and more. And I was picking with both hands, and the cotton boll is like a thorn. You have to stick your finger in and get it and pull it out, put it into a sack, and you go all the way down that row of cotton, or 2 rows of cotton, and it gets full of cotton. And it weighs about 100 pounds because you had a 100-pound sack, which was a 9-foot sack or a 7-foot sack. I always worked with the 9-footer because I wanted to be the best. And so you put this cotton, and I was like 10, I would sling this 100 pounds over my shoulder, walk all the way back to the trailer, weigh it, it's 100 pounds or whatever it was, then climb up in the trailer. My brother would hand me the sack, and then I'd dump it, and then I'd go back and start picking. So the moral of the story is that I thought I was like becoming the best cotton picker, but I was training for basketball because my legs got big, my thighs got big, just like Jimmy the Greek was telling the story, you know, when he said, it was the breeding process.
Right.
So they were the two best farmhands. So the kids were the best athletes. So I ended up, you know, not becoming the best cotton picker, but I remember my mom put a basketball hoop up, said, look, you boys, we need you to have a basketball hoop up because you're not gonna get in any trouble going up and down the highway because, you know, you walk the highway there and the railroad tracks and things happen, people shoot at you and things like that. So we put up the hoop. We had a barrel rim. We didn't have money to buy a real hoop. We put up a barrel rim on the hoop, and it was a big old hoop, man. And we were like, well, we don't have a basketball. And she said, listen, I can make you a basketball. How you gonna make a basketball? So she made a basketball out of this crocus sack, and that's a sack that your potatoes and so on come in. And she stuffed it with cotton, quilts, and you know, stuff like that from around the house. And she said, this is your ball, but you guys got to make up some rules. We made up a rule that you would take 2 bops, boop, bump, or you can make the pass or the shot. Unless you were my brother Andrew, then he took 3. So, so we started playing like that, and with a no bounce basketball. And lo and behold, later on, like in a year later, we got a bouncy. We got a bouncing ball from the junkyard down in Silver City, and we patched that baby up. It had a hole in it. We patched that baby up. Man, that baby felt like, ooh, this was another world. I was like, oh, we got a real ball. And the hoop was calling out your name because it was this big. It was a huge hoop, you know, because it's a barrel rim.
Right.
So, and your backboard was like, if it hit the backboard, it stuck and just fell through. So you were hyped as a player. You was just hyped up like, oh man, I can't miss, I can't. and then when I got to high school, which I was not in high school, but I was in junior high school, I was in the 9th grade, the coach said, and this was a mile away from Silver City because there ain't no school, there's nothing there. So we had to go to Belzoni. And he says, well, look, boy, can you play? Are you good like your older brother? My brother played earlier in Silver City. And then my aunt picked him up and took him to Detroit. And he played there. And so I said, yeah, I'm better than any of them. So he put me on the court and I'm playing, but my nerves had went and my height, I had grown to like 6'4", 6'5". So my coordination was like, oh God, what am I going to do? My legs, my hands couldn't coordinate. And then we started playing. And one night, my center got thrown in jail for throwing a brick through a window. And the coach says, you know what? You're starting tonight. And I was like, oh no, not me. I can't. I just can't, coach. He said, no, you are starting. And so I jumped ball, and I was jumping against Sam Lacey, who was from Indianola, Mississippi, who played in the NBA for years. So Sam decided to test my strength, and he said, hey, look at me, boy. And I said, okay, what do you say? And he spat on me. And I was like, whoa, referee didn't give him a tech. So I got the ball, we tipped the ball, and the guy passed the ball to me, and I was like combobulated. So I just went to what I saw in front of me. I was driving my head down, just like my brothers had taught me. Keep your head down. Don't be like fancy. Just make that layup and pop it in nice. I popped that layup in. Yeah. And I looked over to my sister. Yeah, baby, what do you think? And she had her hand between her head. And I was like, what did I do? And everybody in the gym was like, you put it in the wrong basket. So then, you know, I got myself together and I had a good game, and everybody was like, man, he's going to be better than his brother Leroy. So
you went from Mississippi, and then you go up north now.
But yeah, I'm on my way up north.
I heard, and trust me, please correct me if I'm wrong, that living down south, and you talked about you guys were picking cotton, things of that nature, that living was so hard that you guys had to make do with a lot of things, even if it was dinner when it was roadkill, what have you, that was dinner sometimes.
Oh, yeah, that was real good eating there, my friend. When you don't have food, because sometimes, you know, the weather gets bad and you get a little taste of snow, and you can't hunt the rabbits because the rabbit has wool in his ears, in his back and his shoulder, so you can't eat him, he's poison. And then you go looking for fish. The fish is laying low on the bottom. We don't have those kind of lines where we can go down and get them, and we can't go gigging and get them. So we had to then scrap for food. So we walk along Highway 49, the same Highway 49 that B.B. King, all the great blues players would go along, and wait for somebody to knock something over. And then we took it and brought it home and cleaned it up, put some gravy on it, put some rice with it. Perfecto.
Wow. So,
Great
so
eating. Yeah.
yeah.
And
So
I'm gonna tell you, we didn't eat dogs, so that was so all the other stuff was like, pretty good game there.
Oh my gosh.
So lo and behold, my mother says, you're getting big and you're tall, and these boys are gonna come around, meaning that the white guys are gonna come around and try to put you in jail because they want to keep you on the farm. That's what they did. So lo and behold, they put me in jail overnight. And I came out of jail and bells on it. My mother said, we got to get out of here. You got to get out of here. I can't go with you, baby. You got to trust in the Lord. And I'm going to send you to Chicago to be with your brothers up there. I arrived at Chicago, and I remember, in the airport, the bus station, I saw these brothers, the Nation of Islam, and I'm like, you mean black folks are in the newspaper? He was like, yeah, brother, what's wrong with you? Where are you from? I said, I'm from Silver City, man. Come on. Don't you know where Silver City, Mississippi is? And my brother came, oh, come on in, man. Don't talk to them boys. Them boys, they're rough, man. So we went on home and stuff. And then my brother came over from the one I told you had left and went to Detroit. He was at Bowling Green State University. Mm-hmm. He came over, and just as a family, and he and I went out and started playing basketball on the west side of Chicago because I was intended to go to Crane Tech. And so he decided, well, no, I don't know where we're going, but we got to get out of here. Your brothers are going to screw you up big time. And I'm like, well, they're your brothers too. So we get in the car and we drive to Bowling Green State University. And I can't stay on campus because the dorm matron is looking at me like, well, where's it going to be? So I stayed around and around everybody, and different players put me in their room. And lo and behold, the summer came around, and then they had this big tournament at Crunk. Most folks think that Crunk is just boxing outdoor.
Right,
indoor.
Exactly, the boxing.
But no, it's an outdoor facility as well. So they had this high school all-star event coming up with the Detroit players. So I came in and said, hey, I want to play. My brother got me in with this guy named Will Robinson. And Will said, let's put him into the game. Let's see what he got. And then if he's all right, we'll try to find him a place to stay in Detroit, and he'll be all right here. So I was playing for life and death out there. So I went out and played at 27 points, 15 rebounds. Wow. And I was running, and I was like, this game is over? Because I was used to 12 hours a day as opposed to a 2-hour game.
Yeah.
So then they says, well, let's see how the boy do against Cassie Russell, Bill Buttons, and all of those guys from the University of Michigan, Michigan State.
Who went on to play in the NBA, Cassie Russell, yeah.
Yeah, so I played in that game. I had 15 points and 7 rebounds. And then Dave Being says, the great Dave Being, Hall of Famer, says, let me try him out on our squad. So he put me on with the Pistons. I'm like 15 years old. So I'm like, wow. Yeah, I'm out here with the greats, man, Reggie Harding and all these guys. So I went out there and I played. I got like 15 points and 7 rebounds. And that's when the coach came up and said, all right, we got to find you a place to stay, son. And he adopted me, Will Robinson, the first Black coach in NCAA Division I history. Adopted me and put me into his home. But I was downtown with all of the judges, the lawyers, the doctors, and all of that in Detroit. And then came along Mrs. Bell, who said, well, he need to live near the school. And they were trying to find people to let me stay with them near the school. And so she said, no, he's staying with us. And so that was my home. And I'm just saying all of this now because your audience might not understand, but I'll tell you, it was God's design. It wasn't nothing I was doing special or anything. I was being placed at the right place at the right time. All of this was divine order. My mother said it, you know, God has got you, baby. Don't you worry about a thing. And so the season came around. I played basketball in my junior year. And then they said, well, look, we got to win state championship for the city of Detroit for the first time in 35 years. We had a drought. And so that's when Dave Bean came back into the picture and said, we're going to bring the Pistons over. We're going to scrimmage you guys when we're not playing. And it'll be a good scrimmage too, because we had Ralph Simpson. We had like 5 guys go pro off the team, baseball and football and 2 in basketball, NBA. And so they would scrimmage against us. And then Melvin Franklin from the Temptations was like, I'll watch out for him. Let him ride in my nice ride, you know? So I'm down. We were like rolling around and he's talking about, don't you get in no trouble, man. You don't want to be like David, you know? And I'm like, who's David? Like David Ruffin, no fool. I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm like,
so you had no idea how great these guys are. You're just thinking these are regular guys, whomever, but you don't know you're traveling around and guys who are taking care of you are some of the greatest people who've had an impact on this generation.
On this generation, because I'm from Silver City, Mississippi, where it ain't no silver and it ain't no city. So now I'm talking about Stephen must have heard me in the studio and wrote the Hard Time, Mississippi. But nevertheless, so we get all the way to the Class A state championship, and the whole city is like, you know, because it was blown up in the papers and on the radio, WCHB, all of the radio DJs was talking, the babies are going to take it. And we got our baby from Mississippi. He's ours now in Detroit. He's going to take it. We're going to take it. So we get up to Michigan State for the Class A state championship. And Will Robinson decided, y'all can't stay in the hotel. You're going to get in some trouble. Somebody going to sabotage my run at this Class A state championship. So you're going to stay with your sister, because Mrs. Bell had her daughter was at Michigan State, and what's his name, Clint. All the football players was around at Michigan State. Bubba Smith, all those guys, you know. And so she said, well, why don't you stay at the apartment with her and her roommate? So we stayed in at a roommate and just slept on the floor and did all that stuff and never saw anybody else. And I'll tell you a story about the roommate. The roommate is the wife of now head of Nike basketball, Len Merritt.
Wow.
So we win the Class A state championship. There's going to be this big parade. And we are so stupid, like as a team, we was like, what? We don't want to do a parade. We want to be at Top Hats, which was a hamburger joint on 8 Mile and Ryan. So we went there and all the kids came out and we celebrated. And we never did get a chance to have that parade that we were talking about, because we was getting ready to go off to college. We was like finishing up our grades, trying to tighten them bad boys up. You know, we was being tutored by Dr. Wayne Dyer was my tutor. I had my English professors tutoring me. You got to be ready for this college tour, baby. You got to be ready. And so I wanted my mom to see me play, because she had never seen me play basketball. And she was in Mississippi. How could this happen? So I signed a letter of intent to go to the University of Tennessee. That way I can play against Jackson's, Ole Miss University in Mississippi State. And lo and behold, I get there on campus and like prepping for the year academically and basketball wise. Adolph Rupp says, well, I lost to 5 brothers, which is, if people want to watch the film, it's called Glory Road. Right. It's Texas Western. And so I'm supposed to have the first black to come down here, superstar. And so that argument ensued and everything. So we were in the middle of it. My friend Wiley and Will Robinson and I, and Will said, let's say to hell with this. If you go to a junior college and you stay for 1 year and you maintain that B average that you've been working on, you can leave after 1 year. So I was like, hey, cool, no problem. So I went to Trinidad thinking that I'm going close to Denver and close to Albuquerque. Neither was true. Will told me a fibby. It was like 320 miles from Denver, 410 from Albuquerque. So I was out there, and all you had to do is study, play basketball, and just enjoy life. And that I did at this junior college. And then the '68 Olympics rolled around. Lo and behold, there's rumbles about Kareem is going to, he was Lou Alcindor at the time, that he's going to boycott the '68 Olympics.
Right.
Like, what does that got to do with me? Nothing. And so he boycotted the '68 Olympics. Elvin Hayes and Wes Unseld, other Hall of Famers, they decided to sign a pro contract. And these for the young players that are listening, back in those days, if you were a pro, you had on paper, you haven't played a full game, you only could be an amateur in the Olympics. It was the amateur games before '96, I think it was, whenever the Dream Team went over, he changed it. And so they said, well, we're going to put together a junior college team and bring them down to Albuquerque.
Because all the top players, like you said, Lou Alcindor and those guys said, we're not playing because of obviously what was going on in the country at that time.
Yeah, the Black movement.
Mm-hmm.
And so they put together this team, and we went down to Albuquerque to play against the NIA, the NCAA Division I, and the military. And so they had all of us in the training facilities there. And time came around, we were just playing and playing and playing. And then it came time for to make the cuts. So M-I-E, me, M-I-E, me. Me, I'm thinking, I got me some gear. I can go back to the boys in Detroit. Hey, check this out, guys. I tried out for the Olympic team. And it's like, Spencer Haywood, first player pick. I was like, oh, no, not me. Not me for the Olympic team. Even though I turned it out, in the tryouts. And I was like, yeah, I think I deserve this. And then I'm going to be playing with Pistol Pete. Whoa, man, Pete Maravich. And he said, no, Pete Maravich is cut.
Wow.
Rick Mount is cut. Calvin Murphy is cut.
Wow.
Dan Issel is cut. Tom Bowinkle is cut. And I'm like, well, whoa, wait a minute. And then we selected Charlie Scott from North Carolina, JoJo White from Kansas, who had lost to Texas Western in the quarters or in the finals that year before they got to Kentucky. And we had a strong team, but it was a mixture of like U.S. Army. AAU back then was a big deal. It wasn't like AAU, you playing amateur. It was like next to the pros. So we had two players from there, from Akron, Goodyear. Isn't that ironic? LeBron from Akron. That was a professional team there. And so we got together and was like getting ready to go. And they said, well, everybody got to bring in that passport. I mean, your birth certificate. So I don't have a birth certificate. And I was like, well, why don't you have a birth certificate? Because I'm from Silver City. Nobody have a birth certificate there because we don't have a hospital to be born in. You're born by a midwife, and she put it down someplace, and you're good. And everybody, the farmers and everybody vouched for you. That baby was born at that time, it's okay. So they called my mother, and my mother says, well, I'm not going to send up my Bible. No. I got church on Sunday, and this Bible hasn't been by my side since I was a girl. So so the Olympic Committee says, well, we'll send someone down to take a picture of it. We'll take it down to the Jackson Daily News, and the Jackson Daily News, the newspaper in Jackson, Mississippi, where Dion is coaching. And he came down, took a picture of the Bible, went back to Vital Statistics in Jackson. I got my birth certificate, And I was well on my way because I had that passport. And I was like, I just looked at that passport like, wow, this is so beautiful. This is the most beautiful thing. I'm a citizen. I'm a real person.
That's unbelievable, man.
Yeah. And so we off to Russia, into Yugoslavia, and into Finland as pre-Olympians, before we reach to Mexico City before the games. So we go over to Russia, Yugoslavia, and play, and we come back, and we are going to scrimmage the New York Knicks, Willis Reed, and all those guys. And so everybody said this team is going to lose. They are pitiful. And so we played against the Knicks, and we won. And Willis Reed and Dave the Busher was there, and they was like, "Come on, Detroit, baby," because he's from Detroit too. Dave the Busher. And so Willis was down home, and we were like had that relationship. So he was like, "Man, you guys might win that gold medal." And I was like, "Whoa." And the first time the team ever thought about like, we got this. And in the next round, we landed in Cincinnati. We wanted to play the Cincinnati Royals in an exhibition before we head over to Mexico City. And there was the Big O. My man, the Big O.
Oscar Robertson.
That was my two players in the league that I really dug, was like the Big O and Bill Russell. I was like, oh man, I was just like gazing at him. He's like, stop looking at me, stop staring. You got to play the game. You got to win this gold medal, boy. Come on. So we played against them. And then after that, Oscar sit us down and talked to us about it. Wayne Embry, Jack Twyman, and all those people, they were just talking, you guys are going to win it. And we was like, we left there so high on like, just, we're going to win this gold medal. So we get to Mexico City, and lo and behold, there's all of this rambling going on. Well, who's going to be the blacks that stand up for America right now, for Black America? And it was like, we're here. We're at the games. We are the ones. No, we got to have some revolutionaries in here. And then Tommy Smith and John Carlos come walking in. John, New York City, Hat Creek, he was like, yeah, man. And so George Foreman come in. I'm like, look at this big old dude, man. So we were putting the whole commissary of all of the players together. And so we were just talking. Bob Beeman, he's talking a whole bunch of yak. Like, man, I'm going to jump over the pit. This altitude is going to take me over it.
No, wait a minute, Spence. So you're in this room, right? And you got George Foreman right here. You got Bob Beeman over here, John Carlos. You got Tommy's. At this time, I'm assuming you had to be 19.
Yeah, just 18. 19, yeah.
Did you know at the time these are going to be some of the greatest athletes to ever play the sport, or was it just like, oh yeah, this is old George from Texas, this is old Bob Beeman this is Bob from whatever? And I mean, yeah. Did you have any idea how great these guys were or were going to be?
No, I'm from Silver City. No, okay. I knew of John Carlos and Tommy Smith because it was, all the rambles that was going on there. And George Foreman, I knew him because, he and I would that was our brand, was to get to the commissary and try to eat them out of a home. I mean, that was the whole joy of hanging with George. It's like George could eat more than me. Well, we were like, we're going to eat him out of a home. And so when the meeting came about, we were like, I knew him, but I didn't know what kind of athletes because I was concentrating on basketball. Right. And my guys. And then I had JoJo White, who was from the military, but also from the University of Kansas. And you got Charlie Scott, who was Dean Smith, is all circling around. And they're like, don't you mess this up. Don't you mess this up, you fool. Because you ain't from Detroit, you're from Mississippi. Why are you acting like you're a Detroiter now? I was like, I'm from Detroit, baby. I'm Motown all the way. So we get into the meeting, and we're just sitting around, looking around at the players and all of the people. Wilma Rudolph was there, and so she talked a minute about what it was like with her Olympic year and how Muhammad Ali was like there with them and all of that stuff. And then We were like, okay. And so we start talking about, well, is there anybody here that's uncomfortable with participating in the Olympics this year? And so, there was some, we here. So what's the big deal? And then the nerves was getting a little shaky. So they said, let's bring in our next guest. And they brought in Jesse Owens.
Wow.
Like, whoa, man. I mean, we know that story. So you're just sitting there listening to him talk. And John is, New York. So John Carlos. So he's like, kind of questioning him a little bit. So Jesse kind of got a little tight and he said, hey, how would you have felt if you had to run before Hitler? And look,
that's the mic drop right there.
That's the mic drop. So all of a sudden we were like, oh boy, what you gonna say, John? What you gonna say, John Carlos? So John, came back with a little twitch, and then we all said, let's lace him up, let's get ready to go. And we went out and we just performed in each one of our events. We just performed. Then it got to the finals, and before that, Bob Beeman in the track and field earlier that day, he jumped out of the pit, set a world record that lasted for like 30 years or so.
Yes.
So then we had to go over to practice, but then the big race was coming up. We got, man, John and Tommy, they coming up. And so they race came about. And so when they won first and third, and we were like, John, why did you look over? Because he would have won second if he hadn't looked over, and he did. And the Australian won second, and he won third. And then you get up on the podium. We're gonna salute the brothers back home. We're gonna make sure that they know that we did a wonderful thing. We're supporting the Black movement because it was the same as now, as the Black movement, Black Lives Matter. So.
And did they told you in that meeting that they were going to do it?
No. No, we didn't know anything about what they was going to do, but they had Dr. Harriet, which was there. A lot of people were putting pressure on them. You got to do something. You're the two elders here, and you're from San Jose State, the great track team, and who's going to make a stand? And so they put the glove on and went up on the stand and did this. Lo and behold, the Olympic Committee, all of a sudden, get out of here. You are no longer welcome in this village.
Wow. Kicked them out.
Ran them through all of the press, and the press was there. And a lot of us players came down and see what the hell is going on. And they're kicking them out. And then they're looking at us like, if you do anything, you think about anything as a threat, you're next. And so Will Robinson had to be flown in from Detroit, and they flew him in. He got up in my face. If you think of doing anything, you're not gonna make it back to Detroit, son. I'm gonna kill you down here. And they don't care if I kill you down here in Mexico City.
Right.
But I was like, I'm not gonna do anything anyway. I'm good. We're just trying to win the game. So we had our final game came up, and then we knocked off the Yugoslavs because they knocked off Russia. And I get up on the stand and I'm thinking, wow, 4 years ago, I was picking cotton in that great big city called Silver City, Mississippi. And here I am now with a passport and a gold medal getting ready to be placed on my neck. Oh my God, it's just everything from a young man that you had pushed aside because everything was just moving so fast. I didn't know. And so when I got ready, they put that gold medal on, I just melted, Brian. I was like, oh my God, my legs, I can't keep myself up. And my teammates held me for a minute and I was like, oh boy, let me shake it off. I'm a man. And then later that evening, George Foreman had his fight. And George was always saying, man, I can't do nothing. I can't mess with this. I got to win the gold medal and I'm going to be champion, heavyweight champion of the world. So George won, beat the Russian, put him down like they did with a hog in Mississippi, They put you down, boy. And And George came out and broke out the American flag with his, you know, and we was like, okay, that's not bad. But then everybody got mad at George. What are you doing? You Uncle Tom, you selling out and stuff. And George was like, no, I was living in Boys Hope, Boys Home in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't living with anybody either like me. So we were like playing for our life. And so George did his thing. And then we all ended up getting ready to do our closing ceremonies and everything, and then we embarked back home. And
that's
how
when your biggest fight was getting ready to come. But go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, at that time, Howard Cosell is telling me in my ear, "You won the gold medal, but I'll tell you one thing: those blacks in Detroit is going to be mad as hell at you what you did by coming here and playing. And what do you think about that?" I was like, "They love me." So I get on the plane, and Will says, "They're going to be all right. Don't listen to Howard Cosell." So we fly into Detroit, and we're thinking, you know, them brothers going to get me, man. The Panthers, everybody going to be mad. I land in Detroit, all of the brothers and sisters and white and black, Hispanics, because we have a large Hispanic community in Detroit. They're always out at the airport, at Metro Airport, champion.
Oh, that's great.
Bravo. And I was like, you talking to Will or talking to me? And so then, you know, the governor, who was George Romney, who Mitt Romney's father, he said, "We need you to come home to play at the University of Detroit." Detroit had been burnt down the year before with the riots.
Mm-hmm.
And the governor, Mayor Kavanaugh, said, "Please come home and we'll give the job to Will Robinson, because he's the best coach in the country. We're going to give it to him in your junior year. I mean, after junior and senior year." So I was like, great. So I signed with the University of Detroit, carried out my orders, became the outstanding player of the year. Kareem was the MVP. Then the draft came about where the ABA, there was an ABA, which is the American Basketball Association, and the NBA, which is the National Basketball Association.
And the ABA, for people who know, that was the red, white, and blue type of basketball they had, where obviously Dr. J made famous before he came into the NBA. Yeah.
And so the ABA went after Kareem. They said, "We got to have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to come over here to save this league." And Kareem decided, "No, I'm going to Milwaukee." And then they came courting me, saying, "You're not happy with this situation," because they had hired a new coach at the University of Detroit named Jim Harding over Will Robinson. And I thought, wow, what a betrayal. And so I then said, I think I want to go pro, and I want to get my mother off of her knees in Mississippi, because my mother back had went out and she was still picking cotton from the ground and dragging herself on the ground. And so Hannah Storm's father, Mike Storm, says, "We got a way to sell this thing. We're going to sell it as you need to be coming to the ABA under this hardship rule that we just created." And so they created this thing called the hardship rule, that you had to show extreme hardship and you could come into the ABA. But it was the reason why they did it, because they were in battle with the NBA because they couldn't get the draft picks. So how would we get all of these young players before they get ready for draft? So, and Julius Erving and George Gervin, all those guys were just hanging out there, and they were just, you know, like, "I don't like it here in college. I want to make me some money. I want me a Cadillac too." And so, so I was that first player to do this, and I broke the rule. And they said, "Well, look, if you can score 7 points and maybe 4 or 5 rebounds, this would work." So I had averaged 30 points and 20 rebounds that year as a 19-year-old rookie. And I was Rookie of the Year, leading scorer, leading rebounder, MVP of the All-Star game, MVP of the league. I was like, yeah. So we into this thing, you know. So the ABA got together and said, "Hey, we're going to make you a big splash in the papers. We're going to make you the highest paid player in the world." They gave me a contract for $1.9 million. And I signed the thing without, you know, because I was underage. So I just signed it because I knew that they loved me so much. Come on. This ain't Mississippi.
Right.
So I signed the contract, and the contract read that I would have to be in servitude to the owner of the Rockets, which is Ringsby Truck Line. And I would have to be in servitude from age 50 to age 70. And I would get my money from there. And also, the money would be put away, I know, in this $10,000 dog off plan, which is on Wall Street. And from my age of like 19 all the way up through until 50, that's when the money would accumulate all of this $1.5 million. Just BS completely. And I went back in there and I said, I got a lawyer. I got this young guy named Al Ross, this Jewish lawyer. He was like talking a bunch of talk because he went to Michigan State. Yeah, man, we're going to get them. They're going to make them pay up. You know, so we go in there like, yeah, man. Sit down with the owners. Say, what do y'all want? We want you to redo this contract. And he looked me in the eye and said, you get your nigga ass out of here and you take that Jew lawyer with you. Get out of here. We got you signed and we're not breaking our rule. I was like, oh, Mississippi again. And so Sam Schulman, who owned the Seattle Supersonics, Jerry Colangelo, who owned the Phoenix Suns, were the two expansion teams. And Jerry said, hey, if we're going to fight the ABA, we got to do something about it. Jack Kent Cook, who owned the Lakers and all of the other owners, no, we're not going to stoop that low. And so Jerry Colangelo had signed Connie Hawkins the year before. And he said, see how it turned out with Connie? This is the movement now. We're going to raid that league and tear it down because we won't have a merger. And the owners were against it. But Sam Schulman said, I'm going to sign Spencer Haywood, and I'm going to sign him now, and he's going to play this year. And I was like, my man. And he said, well, not only that, but your contract for 1.9, I'm going to pay it out over the 10-year period of time. Here it is, cash money.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa, this is my kind of guy. So I landed in Seattle, and Lenny Wilkins is the coach. Rod Thorne is the assistant coach, and Tom Masheri is the associate coach. And all of them had on uniforms like I have on because they were player coaches. So we had nobody in a suit as a coach because everybody was player coaches. So we got out there and we started playing, and then I would get to the game, my first big game, and I played the first game. Seattle was like, hey, man, who's this new style of play? Because I ripped the ball off, kicked it out to Lenny, and Lenny was like, get the run on. I started running. He threw the ball to me, and I was like, reached back and grabbed it with one hand and dunked the thing and looked up in the stands and said, yeah, I'm here. And he says, oh, he's a hot dog. Yeah, I'm coming from the ABA, baby. This is what we do. And we don't do that in the NBA. And Lenny said, y'all gonna like him. And so we played that game and everything turned out. And then I get ready to play the next game. They served me with an injunction. And they said, just before the jump ball, ladies and gentlemen, we have an illegal player on the floor, number 24. This game is under protest, as well as we have an injunction for him to leave the floor and go into the locker room. So I left and went into the locker room and just cried that I couldn't play.
And people have to realize, because at that time, you had to be, 4 years removed from high school to play in the NBA at that time.
Exactly. So here I am breaking all of the rules. The NC2A was like, let's sue him because he's destroying our revenue stream. They couldn't say it publicly, so they wrapped themselves in the NBA lawsuit. The ABA says he violated his contract with us. We're suing him too. And then the University of Detroit said, we lost money because he left us. So I had all of these lawsuits wrapped up in one. And here I am trying to play basketball. So I waited for 10 games, and then I get my injunction to play for 10 games. And I played, but yet they were like, make the announcement, illegal player, this game is under protest. And they had told the greats, all of the great players, that if this guy wins this case, they're gonna push you out on the back end. You know, playing one against the other, you know.
Yes.
And so the players didn't back me. The union didn't back me. Wilt Chamberlain, Jerry West, Oscar Robertson, all of them. They were like, nah, we don't want him pushing us out. And so I just played, and they roughed me up. Tom Macheri, who's in the rafters up in Golden State, he was a mad Russian, so he would like fight everybody, and I was like pretty cool. Let Tom take the beating, but he never lost because everybody was afraid of him. He had protected Wilt, you know, when he was up in Wilt Chamberlain when he was up in Golden State, and so I played my 10 games, and then they got another injunction for me not to play. In the meantime, my case had worked its way from the lower courts all the way out to the district court. And then I get another injunction to play. And this is like 10 games down the line. And then I get 10 more games in, and they cut my games to 9 when I got to Cincinnati. Cincinnati, I was like looking so forward to playing against the Big O and thanking him for what he had did. They let me walk out on that floor, Brian, and they said, ladies and gentlemen, we have an injunction against the illegal player number 24, and they kicked me out into the snow because I couldn't be on the grounds in which the arena sat on.
Wow.
So I was kicked out into the snow, and I'm out there just freezing like crazy. And the police that was sitting out there to guard me from going on the grounds, they decided, well, no, this young guy that fought for America in the Olympics, let's put him in our car. We're going to lose our jobs over it, but we're going to warm him up. So they warmed me up and got me right. And we talked about all of the things that I went through. And then it's time the game was over. Then the bus pulled around, and they were like, what are you doing in the police car? I was like, we're just talking. And so, Lenny, get on this bus, let's go. And so we get off and we're going. And then by that time, my case had worked its way to the Supreme Court. And Will Robinson knew Thurgood Marshall because of the judges from Detroit, Judge Bell, Judge Damon Keith, all of those people were part of the judges, the black judges in America. And then we had the most in Detroit at that time. So when we get there, Thurgood Marshall is hearing the case, and he said, gentlemen, we cannot stop this man from playing because the rule itself is tainted. In baseball, you can go when you're 19 or 20 and play professional. Tennis, you can go play whenever you want to. The same thing for hockey. So are you saying because this is a black man and revenue sharing for the NCAA, he's illegal to go? This is making no sense. So he brought up the Sherman Antitrust Act and the Sherman Antitrust Rule and said, hey, you know, this man is not, he's eligible to play. And the court came in 7-2 in my favor. And I was like, whoa, because I was in Baltimore. We're getting ready to play Gus Johnson and Wes Unseld, all them boys, Earl Monroe, all of those boys up in the Baltimore Bullets, you know? And my lawyer was like, yeah, we got him, because we had, the law firm that we had was Caddison, Quinn, and Felser, which was Governor Pat Brown, Jerry Brown's father. We had the MGM entertainment attorney, and we had Frank Rothman, who did free agency for baseball, basketball, all of that. And so it was just a beautiful team, and lo and behold, we won it. But the players didn't accept me yet because, again, I won the case, but then in the back of their mind, he's going to bring all these young players in, and we're out of a job. But not really, because we can kick all them young boys coming in behind. We don't have no problem there. And so we got to Milwaukee, and Kareem, normally everybody went downstairs and stayed downstairs for a minute, let me sweat, and then come back up. Kareem didn't leave. He said, hey, this guy's trying to invade my space. I'm the best young player. And then everybody's talking about Spencer Haywood. I want to play him. And so he came up and he stayed up, and we got out there and dapped. And then all the other players came up, and the game was on. And they had that picture on Sports Illustrated that, you know, he's welcomed by Kareem, and it was like, okay, this thing is on. And that's how I ended up at the Supreme Court and won that case. And if you want to talk about the value of winning that case, we only had 14 teams in the NBA. Once the case was won, we had a pool in which to draft from, because normally guys wait for 4 years around in college or something bad will happen. And then we expand. And then the players themselves, we got so many players coming into the NBA, McAdoo, all those guys coming, Dantley and everybody was coming into the NBA. And the ownership of teams went from 300 million to what we call today 3 billion, you know. And the players themselves was making, you know, Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell was arguing over the year before about who's going to be the highest paid player. And they gave him 125,000. And then Red Auerbach said, I'll make you the highest paid player. And then he gave Bill Russell $1 more. And that's how he became the highest paid player. And then the revenue went up crazy in the NBA. And also, let me just finish this last one, is that by players coming in this early, I have created a total of $30 billion in player revenue, just in salary alone over all of those years. And they still don't know who I am.
Wow. The crazy thing about all of this is because of Spencer Haywood, you're saying that's how we got a Moses Malone. That's how we got a Kobe Bryant. That's how we got a Kevin Garnett. That's how we got a LeBron James, because they were able to come straight from high school right to the league.
And we also got Magic Johnson. He left 2 years after. Larry Bird. We got Michael Jordan. Every player, Elijah Wan, all of them, it's under this one little guy from Silver City, Mississippi, where it ain't no silver and it ain't no city.
And usually when you hear it, they will say it's the one and done rule. In your opinion, what should that rule be called?
That rule should be called the Spencer Haywood rule. And Thurgood Marshall said it before. He said, look, y'all need to trademark this. You need to take care of this for this young boy, because they ain't gonna they are going to push him down in a hole. And, you know, by saying, oh no, we call the rule the hardship for years. Then they went from the hardship to early entry for years. And now they call it one and done, which if you're 2 and done, 3 and done, it doesn't make sense anyway. But now I'm lobbying to the league and to the Players Association, please, man, you know, y'all talking about Black Lives Matters and all of this stuff. And for a guy like LeBron James, I mean, he's like $200 million richer in just player salary because of me. Because if he had to stay for 4 years, he would have lost all that money. He would have lost the years on his legs. He would have lost the scoring titles and all of this stuff. So it's just kind of crazy. So I'm waiting for them to say, no, it's the Spencer Haywood rule, and let's move on. But
has any of the great players from today contacted you and said thank you?
Yeah, LeBron James just did a special on Showtime called it's Shut Up and Dribble series, but he did one called The Rule, which he did a really excellent job. Chris Paul and I have talked. He's the chairman of the board for the current Players Association. We are talking about how to just go ahead and change the name. Michelle Roberts says it should be the Spencer Haywood rule, because people should know when they go across that stage that somebody made a supreme sacrifice. Adam Silver is in an agreement. I don't know where we got stuck with this lobbying thing right now. And I think it's going to happen this year, because what happened, the old NBA took my rule and gave it to Larry Bird. It was called the Larry Bird rule now in the books, but it's not Larry Bird rule. And Larry is always telling me, it's not my rule and I came in under yours. I don't want your rule. I'm the great Larry Bird. You know, get the Spencer Haywood rule out of here.
There's so many aspects of your life to me that is really interesting. And we'll start in the NBA, because like you said, you're with Seattle. I mean, you play for the Knicks, obviously the Lakers. Talk to me about the high and obviously the lows
Okay.
of Spencer Haywood in the NBA?
Well, in the NBA, my first 5 years in the NBA with Seattle, um, again, every year I was basically runner up to MVP. I could never get it because of politics. And like 2 years, I was second team All Pro, but most of my years I was first team All Pro. And then um, Bill Russell came as a coach up in Seattle. We went to the playoffs for the first time in team history. And there was players who thought that I was too big for my britches. So uh, Bill, he'll yield to them as well as I yield to them, saying, man, if they don't want me here, I got to get out of here. And so I ended up in New York with the New York Knicks. And I came in with the idea that I'm going to save the Knicks after they done won 2 championships, of course. So I made a bad press conference entrance. And also, I didn't realize that Willis Reed had just retired. Dave DeBusschere had just retired. And Jerry Lucas. So I'm like, oh boy, I got to carry this kind of load for 3 players. And Phil Jackson was on his last legs. He was coaching with Red Holzman as a player. And Bill Bradley is writing his memoirs. Earl Monroe had just had foot surgery. Walt Frazier was practicing with that big old thesaurus that he was carrying around because he wanted to get, he was going to go into broadcasting, and he had to be Clyde when he got in. He couldn't just go in like everybody else and talk sport. He had to have the adjectives to express his way. And so we were playing basketball there in New York. I was just not playing up to myself. I hurt my leg, but I did get a chance to fall in love. I fell in love in New York for the first time, and I met and married Iman, the fashion model.
Yeah, so you married a supermodel who's at the height of her popularity at that time. Yeah. I mean, the life couldn't get any better, Spencer Haywood. What was that like?
Well, that was like, it was beautiful because she was from Somalia and from a Muslim community, and that settled me into another lifestyle. But then we got a chance to go to Studio 54. We hung out, we did things. We traveled to France because the shows were in Paris. We did all of the shows. And then one day they were shooting a film called, I can't think of the name of it, Michael Williamson and Otto Preminger, the great director. He saw her walking down the street with me and said, this is who should be in this film. And so we were able to go to England and shoot the film. And Lord Snowden, who was married to the Queen's sister, he said, I'm going to do the layout for this expose. And so he laid out a photography shoot for both of us, and it was about the film and stuff like that. And we finished the film and everything. So we in the screening room with all of the people who participated, and I'm sitting over there looking at, is that Gato Barbieri over there? And it was a saxophone, because I'm a jazz man, you know. I'm looking at him like, oh my God, this is, Imam was like, you fool, you can't be with the queen, you with the queen and everybody, what are you talking about jazz for? And I was like, man, did you hear his horn on this tune? You gotta hear this tune. And so we had a great time, man. We enjoyed ourselves. Then she got pregnant with my first child, Zuleika. Zuleika was born, and so Imam was a little lonely in town because her family was still in exile in North Africa, East Africa. And so we decided to bring them in and stay at the brownstone that we had in New York. And so we brought her sister Nadia, her sister Idil over, and her brother Elias. And they lived with us in New York. And so we were like pretty cool family. I didn't know most of the time what they were saying, but because they were speaking Somalian, you know, but they speak English as well. So we just had a pretty good time, man. We enjoyed ourselves. We used to go down to the Village Vanguard and the Village Gate, the Blue Note, listening to all of the jazz. And I remember she had a big surprise for me. We're gonna go see this girl, man. We gotta go see this girl on Broadway. And we was like, Okay, come on, man. I know it's some hoity-toity stuff. So I go into this theater, and this girl is playing Fontaine, a one-man show. Yeah, I'm Fontaine doing this, and she had on a mop and everything. It was Whoopi Goldberg, her first
Wow.
Broadway show, and I was like, "Oh, this is so great!" So we just had ourselves, we did everything.
Do you
And it
think
was good
was
because
it
we were
was it
two.
New York? Was it New York where because during your career there was drug use?
Mhm.
Was it New York? Is
Well,
that
New
where it
York
started?
was not like that kind of drug use. So when I got, and then after playing in New York, and then I ended up being traded to the LA Lakers. I get to the Lakers, we got Magic Johnson, we got Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, you got Jamal Wilkes, you got Norm Nixon, Michael Cooper. We were loaded. And so I'm like hanging out with my old friends in Los Angeles, and they are like, man, everybody is doing this new thing, man. You got to check this shit out. And so I was like, I don't want to do that, man. I tried doing coke, and it didn't work for me. And then, no, they ain't like coke like that. It's like coke that's cooked up. It's like freebasing. And I was like, okay, let me try a hit. I hit a hit, and I went, oh my God. Then I stayed all night at this place, and I'm like, what the hell is this shit? And I watched my game go from, I got there because I was traded from the New Orleans Jazz. I was averaging 25 points and 12 rebounds. I watched my game go down, like a
Wow.
plane crashing. And my family life, Imam was like all in shambles because, we had a miscarriage at that time. It was just so much drama. And the players on the team was like, what is wrong with you, Wood? Come on, man, get it together, man. And I couldn't get it together. I mean, we get to the finals, and here I am. I went out that night and I did some coke, and I did not just snorting. I was just freebasing. I freebased coke, and I couldn't get my heart to stop. Boom, 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 boom. So then I said, well, give me them Quaaludes. So I took the Quaaludes, and I'm like, oh boy. So then I get to the practice, and we having our stretching exercise. We're in the finals now.
Getting ready to play the Sixers.
Yeah. So I'm, stretched out on the floor, and I'm sleeping. Jamal is like punching me. Get up, man. Come on. The coach is looking at you. Everybody's looking at you. I'm like, I can't, man. I can't get up. Look at my arms. And so they send me home. And then I go back and I start playing again, but my hands were gone. The drugs had taken my hands. We're in the finals against Philadelphia, the first two games, and that Magic would be coming down the floor, and he's looking at me like, and I was like, cut, and the ball hit me right in my hand. Boom! It's supposed to be a dunk layup, and I couldn't hold it.
Wow.
It was like fumbling, and so the team was getting nervous, like, man, we got to play him because Wood is going to be mad because I was not myself. I was not cooperative or anything. And so by the third game, before we got to travel to Philadelphia, they said, well, they called me and said, you're going to need to get some help because you're not right and we know what it is. And I'm like, I don't need no help. I'm not. What are you talking about? Y'all gonna like set me down? No, we're gonna suspend you. I was like, you gonna suspend me in the finals? And they did. And that's when I went buck wild. And then we won the championship. And I lost out on everything. I mean, I won the championship with them and everything. And I missed 3 games. I missed 4 games, I think. And Kareem missed 3. So, and Magic had the greatest year of any playoff in playoff history. He was the MVP, 19 years old or 20 years old. He turned that stuff out. And then the league was like, we need to get this stigma off of us with cocaine because the league had been permeated by so many players using it. So let's take the big guy down, Spencer, send him to Italy, give him a good example. They sent me to Italy, and that's when I got myself clean and straight and started playing again, and life was good. And then
I read, not to cut you off, but I read that it had gotten so bad, especially when the Lakers had sent you and suspended you, that you were so upset and obviously enthralled in the drug use that you had a friend from Detroit, and you guys, Coach Westhead, you guys, he concocted some kind of plan to kind of get back at him, correct?
Yeah, but that was just in and talking in the get high mode. You know, it was never a plan that we went out to do this.
Right.
Because, you know, my mom called me in the middle of this big get high scheme, and she said, "You are up to some devilment here, and the Lord don't like that, son." And I was like, "Oh my God, she must be looking at me," because, you know, when you're high on coke, you're paranoid all the time. And I'm thinking, my mother is somewhere in this house. So I panicked, and we never even moved on that idea.
Wow.
And so I ended up going to Italy, getting myself together, coming back to the NBA, playing in Washington, where I took them to the playoffs. I'm feeling really good. Everything is beautiful. And my second year there, Iman is in an automobile accident, a cab accident in New York City. Her face is demolished. The family's all in shambles because she was running the whole household with my daughter, my in-laws there in New York living with us. So I was paranoid that the NBA was going to put me out to pasture again. So I decided, well, on Bernie Bickerstaff and Gene Shoes, who was my coach at the Washington Bullets, I'm out of here. I got to go home to take care of my family, because I didn't know how to ask them. So I said, I'm retiring. I got to go home to do that. And they was telling me, all you got to do is ask us for some time off. You ain't going to stab me in the back. And I was, so I went back to New York, and that's how my whole career ended. Just like that.
Wow. Well, listen, you have a fascinating life. You also have a book that recently came out. Tell the people about the book, the name of the book, and how they can get it.
Well, the name of the book is The Spencer Haywood Rule, the making of an iconoclast. But just say the Spencer Haywood Rule, because that's what I'm asking the players who are benefiting from it. And we have, like, out of the 500 players in the NBA, we have like 490 under this ruling. So they should change the name to the Spencer Haywood Rule. I have a movie that's out that's on Amazon Prime. It's called Full Court. I have a strong marriage with my wife, Linda, who's listening over there on the other side of the house. This is for 29 years. I have 4 daughters. Zuleika, my oldest daughter from Iman, she's married with the 1 daughter. I have a granddaughter, Lavinia, and my next daughter, Courtney. She's a professor at Lincoln University, historically Black college. And my next daughter is Shakira. She is a practicing psychologist, a practicing psychiatrist in New York City. And my youngest daughter, she just left Slam magazine. So those are my girls. And I have 2 grandsons, Landon Spencer Haywood and Golden Spencer Haywood, but he ain't no Haywood. But, Golden.
That is fantastic.
And he's one. So life is good. I've been blessed. I have survived prostate cancer. I have survived COVID. I've just been so blessed. And God has seen me through all the ups and downs to have me right in front of you on your show, who I admire, your broadcasting and all of this stuff. So I'm like, whoa, this is
an honor.
Cool stuff.
It's an honor. It's really an honor to have you in. I saw part of your movie. Kim Clemens, who helped write that, is a phenomenal producer. And I really enjoyed it. This segment of the show is brought to you by Man Cave Health. It's a public charity that raises awareness nationwide for prostate cancer. Many of you know I battled prostate cancer, and had it not been for me taking a PSA test, the doctor told me I could have been dead within a year. 30,000 men die every year from prostate cancer simply because they didn't know their number. They didn't get an annual check. And also, do you know 1 out of every 4 Black men are diagnosed with prostate cancer? How important is your health to you?
My health to me is everything, and it's about a PSA. And when you say to guys, and I'm working with the Prostate Cancer Foundation of America, along with the NBA, we have solicited 30 teams and 30 owners to get involved in this program. Grant Hill and Calvin Hill is one of our spokespersons. They are, every time they make an assist, it goes to Prostate Cancer Foundation or to whoever is raising funds for prostate cancer, and with the Atlanta Hawks. And so I think it's going to be replicated throughout the NBA, which is a good thing. And, you know, when you tell people of our ilk, is that, you know, man, when you're getting your physical, get your PSA. I ain't getting no physical anyway. What am I going to need a physical for? And you say, just PSA is just, you're drawing blood and you're just getting your PSA. And okay, well, once I get my PSA and it comes back positive, or it's my
Numbers high,
my levels are going up. You mean that guy going to put his finger up my butt? Yeah, you got to have a, you know, you got to check it out.
Right.
So they have all of these excuses of why not. And it's life-saving. And the women who love us, I mean, you got to jump on us too, because men, you know how stubborn we are.
Yes, we are.
Hey, come on, man. I ain't going to no doctor. I know more than the doctor. And so, and I looked at my family tree. My brother, Roy, he's been a prostate cancer survivor. And so it is in my genes. It is in a lot of our genes. And so we have to really look at taking care of ourselves. This is no time to mess around. And COVID has shown us you can have prostate cancer, you can catch COVID, you can do all of these things. So now men health is like ridiculous, and women health. We have to look forward to trying to eradicate this one, because we can. All we have to do is get tested.
The mission for Man Cave Health is to encourage all men to take just 1 hour out of the year to either get a physical and a PSA test. And with donations from people just like you, you can help other men who maybe don't have the resources to pay for a PSA test or a physical exam. All you've got to do is go to the Man Cave Health website at mancavehealth.org and sign up for their free newsletter. It is a great resource. And please make a donation, because this public charity is trying to make sure that all men can get a physical and a PSA test. And all you've got to do to donate to this public charity is text The Last Stand to 44321. Here with the great Spencer Haywood from the NBA. And Spencer, for everyone who watch and listens to this podcast, we allow them to submit questions. We got some on social media for you, so let's get right to them. Okay. This one from Dre from Twitter. He says, in your opinion, who is the greatest Laker?
Kareem, duh. Excuse me, hello, yoo-hoo. But now Wilt is a close follower, but LeBron is coming up. And I'll tell you who the best player I think that ever played, the GOAT. You want to know?
Well, that's later. That's later.
Okay.
That's later. But you know, a lot of people, especially Laker fans, they love Kobe too. And I think
Kobe. Oh man, I forgot. Oh my God, what am I?
Yes.
Kobe is number one.
Over Kareem, huh?
Over Kareem, because you know Kareem is 7'2", so you can't like just. He's in a whole nother category, you know. And,
yeah.
You know, Kobe was the man. Kobe's over there in the closet, some shoes.
I love it. Carlos from Facebook asks, what current NBA player or players remind you of yourself when you play?
I would take a mixture of LeBron James and Giannis, because I was long and stretchy, but I was a bully kind of player like LeBron, and I rebound like the Greek. And
yeah.
So, you know, so those two were my guys. I shot like Durant, but that's another kind of level there.
Let me tell you something, you bad boy. If you a combination of Durant, Giannis, and LeBron, You one bad mamma jamma, Spencer Haywood.
Well, now, in my rookie year, these people should know that I was doing 30 and
30
20.
and 50. Yes, yeah. I mean, I
Yeah,
loved
and
how
when I was in Seattle, I averaged 29 and 13. So
Speak on it.
I'm like not just a dude.
Speak on it, brother. Speak on it. Okay, Spencer Haywood, it's time for the last segment of this show. We call it The Last Stand. I'm going to give you a series of questions. You give me the first thing that comes to your mind. You ready?
Yes.
When it comes to repping the teams you play for or played for, what team do you rep the most? Is it the Sonics? Is it the Knicks? Is it the Lakers? Is it Washington? Is it the Jazz?
I got on my Laker gear because I won a championship there, but I would think that I rep more the Knicks because we don't have a team in Seattle, so you don't have you don't have a team, so you can't rep something that you don't have. And they didn't, Oklahoma, when they stole the team, they didn't rep us good. But I went into the Hall of Fame as a Seattle Supersonics.
Love it.
New York Knicks.
Who was, in your opinion, the best athlete at the '68 Olympics? Was it Tommy Smith, Bob Beamon, George Foreman, or Spencer Haywood?
Spencer Haywood, because I set the record in most points in the history of America. I was the youngest player to ever play in the Olympics, and also I set the field goal percentage that still stands today at 72%.
Love it.
I would have to give it to Tommy and John, though.
Okay. In your opinion, who is the GOAT when it comes to the NBA?
LeBron James.
Okay. And you said it decisively. No Jordan.
Yes, I sure did. Yes, I did.
Who is the greatest player you had to play against?
Kareem.
Yeah. Last but not least, when it all comes down to it, Spencer Haywood should be known as the man who did what?
Created wealth for the NBA and for the players. The Spencer Haywood rule is the name of the rule.
I love it. Spencer Haywood, one of the greatest to ever play basketball. Man, your life is fascinating. I wish you all success, obviously, with the book, with the movie. I have been looking forward to this. I just want to say thank you for doing it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, listen, that's what we do here on The Last Stand. We bring you some of the biggest names in sports and entertainment, just like the great Spencer Haywood. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you again next week.
Thank you.